Hi, this is Stephen with a short video on types and sources of secondary data. Secondary can be found internally, and there's a whole separate video on that available. Current companies and their partners do tend to gather lots of data on customers, prospects, store visitors, website visitors, etc. But if that internal secondary information is not enough, secondary can also be found externally. So what are those choices? What are the different types of external secondary? And where should you start to look? So if you have that question and you've looked internally, then think about first couple places might be using your feet and using a library. External sources will include at least a half dozen different types. Syndicated research, and a subtype of that might be global reports. Then news and periodicals via databases typically. Street and other casual research, hence the feet logo. Audit data and data appends. We're approaching these types of external secondary in this order for a specific reason that I hope will be clear in a minute. They tend to be higher risk as you move down the list. Syndicated research is a pretty safe choice. These are done by major suppliers. So fixed fee reports on the chocolate category, petrol consumption, baking and the homes, finances and mortgages, different categories, different products. Group habits, they could be Gen Z and financing, seniors and home services. They range from $250, $300, $500, all the way up to 20,000 plus. And they tend to be really well written, very clearly written, and pretty cost efficient versus you trying to collect all that data on your own. And yet, there are some limitations. Syndicated reports tend to have very few chances or opportunities for you to customize what's in the report. The cost and availability and reliability will vary a bit by source, so do some research on the research, if you will. And the uses for the different types of data will vary, the level and depth at which the samples extracted, for example. Finally, the supplier's credibility will vary by type of report. So syndicated, lots of upsides, cheap versus how you can do it on your own, often very clearly written, reasonably bias-free because they're trying to present things in a cogent, factual basis with no tilt for one company or another because they're not sure who's going to actually end up buying it. Could be a post-secondary institution, could be the Acme company, could be the Smith company. Standardized formats across categories help you get really efficient at learning where to find stuff and what kind of information is in what kind of report from each supplier. There are some downsides, as I said, no custom questions. If you can get it, so can your competitors, so nothing here is truly proprietary, and it might not have been done recently. Do keep in mind that most syndicated report suppliers will publish a schedule when the next report on the chocolate confectionery category will be available. So my very biased view of where these reports get their best go, I think Gartner and Forrester are great starts for technology syndicated reports, Scott's on entrepreneur and small business, Work on ads, Vividata, Statista on things like media planning stats, A to Z on global, Mintel, MarketLine, Passport, Package Facts are great category reports, great, very reliable category reports. Global studies are a subsection of syndicated reports. These can be useful in many ways. For example, how to benchmark higher rates of consumption, right? If your market, let's say it's Canada, is lower in consumption of or penetration of hybrid automobiles than Britain, then you might want to compare what are the fit factors, how high the sky is, what different segments may have developed in that more developed market. They can be a predictor of the market's future in your market nation, so think about looking for global reports. And the typical source will be syndicated reports, but it's not the only place you can find global information. Especially if you're at a lean organization, you should tap the unexpected sources of global info. And Professor Tim Richardson has indicated, hey, these can be trade associations, embassies, government departments, lots of ideas for you to take advantage of. Now let's move on to news periodicals. These can be trade magazines, industry mags, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, etc. All kinds of news sources, and frequently there are at post-secondary institutions or municipal libraries may have business periodicals indexes, such as ABI Inform, Business Source Premier. They agglomerate or aggregate a whole lot of different publications together in one keyword-friendly format. So breaking news can be found in those syndicated news suppliers, and you might get through your library behind the paywalls, which is dynamite. Sometimes those journalists working for those publications have inside sources getting you net new information and confidential information that you wouldn't normally learn about in normal, syndicated reports. And some journalists are very good at being objective and mature. However, be aware, even smart journalists can get duped. So Fortune and Forbes both put Friedman on the cover of their mags. Oops, awkward moment. A marketing and strategy do tend to run the occasional puff piece, kind of a complimentary, overly flattery view of a marketing executive, very confident types who tend to puff up their achievements, and then they may or may not fact check the reality of those achievements. So news, upsides, easy to search by keyword, very current, that's why it's called news, industry insider info. Downsides, paywalls, may not be the info you seek, possibility of bias and lack of due diligence on behalf of the journalist. Let's move on to street research and other casual research. Street research means getting out there. So if you're working for a quick service restaurant and you need vegan options, go do a menu search. If you want market share information and you sell a fast-moving consumer good, go to some stores and look for share of shelf by brand or by flavor or whatever else. So why is this important? Street research is important because not doing it means you're just being lazy. This is a great place to start to get acquainted with the category, maybe the consumers, the segments of the market, etc. So a classic way of doing street and casual research might be, for example, a store check. So even the most ivory tower companies will send a new office marketer out on a store check. So if you work for, say, Ride laundry detergent, it's week 2 of your career or week 3 of your career, you're going to go out there and do a store check. So you're going to go to 8 grocery stores, 3 mass merch stores, 3 drug stores, 1 convenience store, 2 warehouse clubs, places that sell laundry detergent, and you're going to make notes on what? Think about it. What could you learn from a retail store and set of retail stores? Please pause the video and think about it. Start to write down what you would be making observation notes upon so we can learn about how the category is working and what's going on. Okay, so here's my list. I hope you did pause and give it a shot. Here's my list of some of the things that I've been making notes of for many decades doing store checks. First, the store. Is it busy? Is it clean? Is it, what's it appear to be? Are the basket cart shoppers, etc.? Are people shopping together or alone? Older people, younger people, general, right? Traffic patterns. Second, category. Where is your, let's say it's jam, your jam and spreads category located in the store? Is it on the perimeter racetrack or is it on the internal lower traffic space? How many feet are devoted to it, linear, vertical? Are there any secondary locations? They have, let's say, mint jelly over there in the freezer section above the frozen lamb. Is it an A or B store? Are there any infringements on the section, like a support column in the middle of the section? Kind of interferes with the flow. What are the segments of the marketplace? So if you're looking for laundry detergent, what % is cold water versus regular? What % is unscented and fragrance? What are the brands involved? That's a pretty obvious one. Where are they located? How are they laid out? What are the prices, promotions, and stock situation? All pretty standard stuff that you might do when you go in to do a store check, a form of street research. What other forms of street or casual research are there? Well, there are user reviews. I know. Yeah, they're more suited to basic research than applied research, and they are very unreliable. However, it might give you insight into product attributes, competitor lists. It, I know they're gamed and hit by bots and biased and bot, but you got to learn what the haters are saying about your brand. You might as well know what some possible weaknesses and strengths are. Okay, the last two external sources, remember we said we'd cover them last because they're higher risk. Audit data is often the most costly. Data pens have the highest privacy or personal data sharing risk. Audit data. This is your market sales, market share kind of stuff done by audit or a panel, a monitored panel of a group of stores or consumers. So for Nielsen, it's fast moving consumer goods. They'll tell you the market share of laundry detergents and jams, of sandwich bags. For IMS is the leader in audit data of pharmaceutical therapy. So a prescription drug, they'll know what the hospitals are dispensing, what drugstores are dispensing behind the counter. Very hard information to get if you don't go to the audit data, its company itself. Numeris for radio listener, ComScore for digital, etc., etc. It doesn't cover 100% of the market, but what it does cover is very reliable. So please consider that audit data will be proprietary data, pretty pricey audit proprietary data. So upsides, more accurate than anything you can gather, and they are the experts on this information. Plus they have the trended background. So you can not only tell what market share is, you can look back a year, 2 years, 3 years, find out what the trend was for a segment of the market or a brand, which is very insightful. Downsides, costly, monopoly structure, and they have a hard time admitting the coverage factor or estimating. That's what percentage of the sales of, let's say, laundry detergent are done outside the category through flea markets and boutique outlets and garage sales. So audit data suppliers are often in that monopoly, oligopoly position, so they don't negotiate price. What do you do if you're on a tiny budget? I would say consider a proxy or another way of getting almost good enough data. First, street research. We already spoke about share of shelf as somebody who goes in the store and looks and measures. Second, casual research. Some conversations with, let's say, the section store manager who manages produce or laundry detergent in the store. You have a chat with them. Find out who's number one, who's number two in the market that way. And number three, search for market share info in syndicated reports. It won't be nearly as reliable as the audit data that you'll see from the audit firms themselves, but it might be good enough for what you're needing. Finally, data appends. Data appends we're covering last. What you're doing here is you're buying data depth or extra data on individual customers through those longitudinal data partners, companies like Axiom, Experian, TransUnion, Air Miles, etc. Please beware the privacy regulations. The data partner you're dealing with must have permission to share the data, and you must be very aware of the steps and precautions you take and how the data can and cannot be used. Appends often involve what's called blinded matching. Your coded data and then the data partner's data is synced together, and then the identity of the actual possessor of the data or the holder of that data, the actual consumer, is removed. So it's anonymized in this aggregated file. Well, if it's anonymized, how is it useful to me? It's still useful to you because now you can do modeling analysis on like groups of consumers. In other words, you can find segments, and that's useful for you because all you knew about was their mortgage behavior. But now that you've appended the data, you know how often they take vacations, whether they own a cottage or not, which magazines they subscribe to. You know more about their total life and their values. But do not use this data unless you're aware of the regulatory, legal, and ethical aspects, and only do this if you're dealing with a trusted partner. Speaking of a trusted partner, a special type of data append is to work with companies that are reputable and savvy, such as Environics, on shared lifestyle and values. This is a brilliant way of working with data append because you can get smart about life stage priorities, self-image goals of your customers. And a world leader in this is actually close by to some of you if you're located in Toronto, and that is their Environics Data's Prism tool. So think of a relative or friend's neighborhood, enter their postal code, and you'll find out that these psychographic data suppliers will tell you all about what's typical behavior and values and life stage in that neighborhood. So are they urban bohemians who are counterculture types and against brands, or are they more conservative aspirational types who try to check the box on more education and get the luxury brand cars as the top priority in their life? Or are they soccer parents whose whole life revolves around their preschool kids or their school age kids? Each one of these is going to be potentially an opportunity to customize your marketing communications. Where you locate something like a mini dealership won't be in the same place as a Maserati dealership or as a Jeep dealership, right? So please consider this as one of those data appends, but once again, only deal with trusted suppliers. This is a supplier I would salute. And that's it. Good luck with finding your way through all those wonderful types of external secondary data.